The jungle stretched for miles, untouched by human hands, dense and full of mysteries. Tall trees stood like silent giants, their twisted roots sinking deep into the earth. Alien explorers had landed here, confident and curious, ready to study Earth and its life forms. Their silver ship, sleek and silent, hovered above the forest floor as they prepared for their mission. The aliens, members of a highly advanced species called the Exorons, believed themselves to be the masters of survival. Their technology allowed them to scan entire planets, detect life from miles away, and remain completely invisible to any creature. To them, Earth was just another planet to catalog and control. Asa, they stepped out of their ship. Their leader, Commander Vex, looked around the forest. "Primitive," he muttered, his voice cold and calculating. The jungle was quiet, with only the occasional rustle of leaves or distant bird call. The team of 5 aliens spread out, their suits blending with the surroundings like liquid mirrors. Their advanced sensors scanned every movement, every sound. Still, something felt off. The silence was too perfect. No animals scurried away, no insects buzzed around them. It was as if the jungle was holding its breath. "Commander, this place is strange," said one of the aliens, a younger scout named Learn. "The ecosystem doesn't behave normally. Animals should be more active at this time." "Focus on the mission," Vex replied sharply. "We're here to gather data, not chase ghosts." But as they moved deeper into the jungle, the uneasy feeling grew stronger. Learn noticed claw marks on a tree, impossibly high and deep, as if some massive creature had sharpened its claws there. Another alien, Farah, found half-eaten remains of a large animal, but there were no tracks leading to or away from it. "What kind of predator kills like this and leaves no trail?" Farah whispered, her voice tinged with fear. The group paused to assess their surroundings. The jungle felt alive, but not in a comforting way. The air was heavy, and shadows seemed to shift unnaturally. Vex dismissed their concerns and ordered them to continue. "There is no predator on this planet that can harm us. We are invisible to them." But the jungle knew they were there. That night, the team set up camp near a clearing. Their advanced technology created a protective dome around them, blocking out threats, or so they thought. As darkness fell, the forest came alive with strange noises. Leaves rustled, branches creaked, and faint growls echoed in the distance. Farah was on guard duty when she heard it, a low, guttural sound that made her blood freeze. She activated her scanners, but they showed nothing. The growl grew louder, circling the camp. "Commander, something is out there," she said, her voice trembling. "Hold your position," Vex ordered. "It's likely an Earth animal. It can't see us." Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. The team rushed to find Learn, but he was gone. His tracking device lay on the ground, shattered. The dome was intact, but somehow the predator had taken him without a trace. "What kind of creature can bypass our defenses?" Farah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. Vex clenched his fists. "We'll find Learn and destroy whatever did this." But the words felt hollow, even to him. The remaining 4 aliens moved cautiously through the jungle, their weapons ready. They found no signs of Learn, only more claw marks and strange disturbances in the earth. Hours passed, and tension hung heavy in the air. Then, another scream. This time, it was Farah. The group spun around, but she was already gone. Her weapon lay on the ground, bent as if it had been crushed by something impossibly strong. Panic set in. "We need to leave," one of the aliens said, his voice shaking. "This is no ordinary predator." Vex refused to retreat. "We are Exorans. We do not run from primitives or their beasts." But even he could feel the fear creeping into his mind. By now, the group had dwindled to 3. Every step felt like a risk, every sound a potential threat. The jungle seemed to watch them, its shadows growing darker and deeper. When the 3rd alien vanished, leaving only a faint smear of green blood on the forest floor, Vex finally gave the order to retreat. But it was too late. They raced back to their ship. The jungle came alive with motion. Shadows darted between the trees, faster than their eyes could follow. Growls and hisses echoed from all directions. Vex and the last remaining alien reached the clearing where their ship waited, but before they could board, the Predator struck. It moved like a ghost, unseen and unstoppable. Vex's companion was dragged into the darkness, his screams cut short. Vex turned, his weapon shaking in his hands. "Show yourself," he shouted into the void. But the Predator did not answer. He barely made it back to his ship, slamming the hatch shut as something massive slammed into the hull. The ship's sensors showed no life forms outside, but Vex knew better. Whatever was out there wasn't just a creature, it was a nightmare.ase. The ship lifted off. Vex stared down at the jungle, now silent once more. He sent a single message back to his home planet. "Earth is not what we thought. It is their domain. Do not return." And with that, the jungle of shadows claimed its secrets once again. The alien ship hovered high above Earth's surface, its sleek, metallic body invisible to the human eye. Inside, the crew of explorers from the planet Zanara watched with curiosity. They had come to study Earth's most fascinating creatures, humans. Humans were primitive, the aliens thought, but resilient. Despite their lack of advanced technology, they had survived countless challenges. The Xynorons wanted to understand what made them so unique. "Activate the cloaking device and initiate observation," Commander Rail ordered. The ship's systems hummed softly as the crew began scanning the dense forest below. Through their advanced sensors, they could see humans moving in the darkness, carrying torches and weapons. "They're so fragile," remarked one of the crew, a young analyst named Kale. "Fragile, yet they endure," Rail replied. "Let's see how they survive in this environment." The crew observed a group of 6 humans making their way through the forest. The humans seemed alert, their eyes darting toward every shadow. They spoke in hushed tones, their faces tense. "What are they afraid of?" Kyle asked, intrigued. "Perhaps they're hunting," another alien suggested. But the humans were not hunters. They were prey. The first sign of danger came suddenly. A low growl echoed through the trees, sending chills down the human spine. They stopped, gripping their weapons tightly. The Xynorans adjusted their sensors, trying to locate the source of the sound, but found nothing. "There's no life form near them," Kale said, frowning. "That can't be," Rail muttered. "Run a thermal scan." The scan revealed strange distortions in the air, like ripples of heat moving through the forest. Whatever it was fast and invisible. The humans began to panic. One of them, a young man carrying a machete, pointed toward the darkness. "It's coming!" he shouted. Before anyone could react, the creature struck. It moved with terrifying speed, a blur of motion that the Xynoran sensors struggled to follow. The young man was lifted off the ground, his screams echoing briefly before being cut off. The remaining humans scattered, their torches swinging wildly as they ran. "What was that?" Kale asked, his voice shaking. "A predator," Rael said grimly. "And it's not like anything we've seen before." The Xynorans continued to observe, their fascination mixed with unease. The predator was unlike any life form they had encountered in their travels across the galaxy. It didn't leave tracks, didn't register on normal scans, and killed with ruthless efficiency. One by one, the humans fell. The predator hunted them silently, using the shadows to its advantage. The Xynorans watched as a woman tried to climb a tree to escape, only for the creature to pull her down with unimaginable strength. Another man, armed with a rifle, fired blindly into the darkness. The gunfire echoed, but when the smoke cleared, the predator was gone, and so was the man. "This is no ordinary animal," Cal said. Rael nodded. "It's intelligent. It's playing with them." The crew's excitement turned to dread as they realized the truth. The predator wasn't just hunting humans, it was toying with them, testing their limits. "Why can't we detect it?" Kale asked. "It must have evolved to blend perfectly with its environment," Rael said. "Or maybe it's something more." As the last human fell silent, the forest grew eerily quiet. The predator had finished its hunt. The Xynorans should have left then, but they didn't. "Commander, what if we sent a drone to study it?" Kyle suggested. Rael hesitated. "It's dangerous. But we need to understand this creature. Prepare the drone. The crew launched a small, silent drone into the forest, its sensors calibrated to detect even the faintest movements. At first, the drone picked up nothing. The predator seemed to have vanished. Then, without warning, the drone's feed went dark. What happened? Rail demanded. Kale's hands flew over the controls. Something destroyed it. It was too fast for the cameras to capture. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, the Zynerans felt fear. "We should leave," one of them said. Rail shook his head. "No. We're here to learn. We'll deploy another drone." But before they could launch it, the ship's sensors detected movement. Something was approaching them. "It's coming toward us," Kyle said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's impossible," Rail said. "We're cloaked. It shouldn't be able to see us." The crew watched in horror as the predator emerged from the forest, its shimmering outline barely visible against the night sky. It had found them. "It's intelligent," Rail said, his voice trembling. "It knows we're here." The predator leaped onto the ship, its claws screeching against the hull. The Zynerans scrambled to activate their defenses, but the creature moved too quickly. Alarms blared as it tore through the outer layers of the ship, searching for a way inside. "Take off!" Rail shouted. The ship rose into the air, but the predator clung to it, refusing to let go. It slammed its body against the vessel, its strength shaking the entire crew. Finally, with a desperate burst of energy, the ship accelerated into the sky, leaving the predator behind. As they escaped Earth's atmosphere, the crew sat in stunned silence. "What was that thing?" Kyle asked. Rail didn't answer immediately. He stared at the planet below, its forests and shadows hiding secrets they would never understand. "It's a reminder," he said finally, "that we're not always the hunters." The Zynerans left Earth, vowing never to return. But the memory of the predator stayed with them, a chilling reminder of the dangers hidden in the darkness. The Zorathian ship descended quietly onto the barren Earth desert, its sleek, reflective surface blending into the starry sky. The crew of 5 elite aliens stood inside, their eyes focused on the monitors displaying Earth's barren landscape. They had come here not for war, but for knowledge of a strange, terrifying rumor circulating through the galactic networks. Earth, once a thriving planet of billions of humans, had fallen silent. The species had vanished, leaving behind empty cities and wild, overgrown lands. Stories had spread of an invisible force that had wiped out humanity, a predator that no one had ever seen. The Zorathians were skeptical but intrigued. Their advanced technology made them confident they could uncover the truth. "Deploy the ground scanners," commanded Captain Droth, his voice calm but firm. Within moments, their systems came to life, sweeping the desert with electromagnetic pulses, searching for signs of movement. The screens showed nothing, no life, no anomalies. Just endless sand. "Nothing here," said Kaelm, the youngest crew member. He adjusted his helmet, looking uneasy. "Maybe the stories are just myths." "Humans had a tendency for exaggeration," Droth agreed. "But we won't leave until we're sure." The team stepped outside, their silver suits reflecting the faint moonlight. Their scanners continued to hum, but the desert remained silent. The only sounds were the crunching of their boots on the sand and the occasional whisper of the wind. "We should explore the nearby ruins," suggested Zara, the team's biologist. She pointed to the faint outline of a city on the horizon, its skyscrapers half buried in sand. As they walked toward the ruins, a strange sensation began to settle over them. It wasn't fear exactly, but a feeling of being watched. Droth felt at first a prickling at the back of his neck, as if unseen eyes were studying him. He dismissed it as nerves, but the feeling wouldn't go away. When they reached the edge of the city, the ruins loomed over them like ancient skeletons. Broken glass and twisted metal littered the streets, and faint graffiti marked the crumbling walls. "This place feels wrong," Callan muttered, glancing around nervously. "Focus," Droth ordered. "We're here to collect data, not emotions." But even Droth couldn't ignore the eerie atmosphere. The silence was absolute, as if the city itself were holding its breath. As Zara began scanning the area for biological traces, her device picked up something unusual. "Captain," she said, frowning, "I'm detecting faint energy readings. They're moving." Droth's eyes narrowed. "Where?" "Everywhere," she whispered. Before anyone could react, a loud metallic screech echoed through the ruins. The team spun around, weapons drawn, but they saw nothing. The scanners, advanced enough to detect even microscopic organisms, showed no life forms. "It's here," Kalen whispered, his voice trembling. "What's here?" Droth barked, scanning the area with his visor. Another screech came, closer this time. Then, a sudden, sharp cry. The team turned to see Zara struggling, her body lifted off the ground by something unseen. She screamed as her suit crumpled, and then she was gone, dragged into the darkness. "Zara!" Kaelin shouted, running after her, but Droth grabbed his arm. "Stay together," Droth yelled. His voice betrayed no fear, but his mind raced. Whatever had taken Zara was unlike anything they had encountered before. The remaining crew formed a tight circle, their weapons ready. The desert wind howled through the broken buildings, but nothing else moved. Then, without warning, the creature struck again. This time, it targeted Lauren, the team's engineer. His screams echoed as he was pulled into the shadows, his weapon firing wildly in every direction. "Activate thermal imaging," Droth shouted. Kaelin adjusted his visor, but the display showed nothing. The predator left no heat signature, no trace of its presence. "This isn't possible," Kaelin muttered, his hands shaking. "It's not an animal," Droth said. His voice was steady, but his mind was racing. "It's something else. Something evolved." The two remaining Zarathians retreated into an abandoned building, sealing the entrance behind them. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the faint glow of their helmets cast eerie shadows on the walls. "We need to call the ship," Kaelin said, his voice trembling. Droth nodded, activating his communicator. "Command Center, prepare for extraction. We're under attack by an unidentified," he didn't finish. The walls around them groaned as if alive, and then the predator struck again. It moved like a ghost, silent and unstoppable. Kaelin was yanked backward, his screams fading as the darkness swallowed him. Droth was alone now. His weapon shook in his hands as he backed into a corner, scanning the room. "Come on," he muttered, his voice low. "Show yourself." The predator didn't show itself. Instead, it waited, toying with him. Droth could feel its presence, could hear the faint rustle of its movements, but he couldn't see in a desperate move. He activated his emergency beacon, signaling the ship to extract him immediately. As the transporter beam began to hum, the predator struck one last time, its invisible claws slashing through the air. Droth barely made it back to the ship. His suit was torn, and blood seeped from a deep gash on his arm. As the ship ascended, he looked down at the ruins below. The predator stood there, its outline barely visible against the sand. It didn't chase the ship. It didn't need to. It had won. Back aboard the ship, Droth sent a single message to his superiors. Earth is no longer a safe planet. It belongs to the invisible stalkers. Do not return. The alien research vessel Nyrath floated above the forest canopy of Earth, its sleek, metallic body camouflaged against the darkness of space. The crew of 6 Xynorian scientists had come to study the remnants of Earth, a planet abandoned by its dominant species, humans. The stories surrounding Earth were haunting. Humanity hadn't died in a war or natural disaster. They had been hunted. Why what? No one knew. Captain Threll stood at the central console, observing the dense, wild forest below. "Prepare the ground team," he ordered. "We need samples and data. Let's see if the stories are true." The crew descended to the surface in a small shuttle, landing on a patch of overgrown ground near the ruins of a human settlement. The air was heavy with the scent of damp soil and decay. The forest was alive with sounds chirping insects, rustling leaves, and distant calls of nocturnal animals. "This doesn't look like the lair of an apex predator," said Jorah, the team's biologist, as she stepped out of the shuttle, scanning the area with her handheld device. "Predators don't advertise their presence," replied Cran, the weapons specialist, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. The team spread out, their boots crunching on the forest floor. They moved cautiously, scanning for any signs of life. But the forest seemed oddly empty. Aside from small animals, there were no signs of larger creatures. Maybe the humans were wiped out by a disease, Jorah suggested, studying a plant sample. Or they left because their technology failed, added Varric, the engineer. Threll frowned. Don't jump to conclusions. Keep scanning. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the atmosphere grew heavier. The trees were thick and twisted, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the moonlight. Shadows danced in the dim glow of their suit lights. "Captain," said Rin, the navigator, her voice tense. "I feel like we're being watched." Thrill stopped and looked around. The forest was silent now. Too silent. "Everyone, stay close," he ordered. The team huddled together, their lights sweeping across the trees. Cran adjusted his weapon, his sharp eyes scanning the darkness. Then came the first sign of trouble. A faint rustling sound, almost too quiet to notice, echoed from the trees. The team froze. "What was that?" Jorah whispered. "Probably an animal," Varric replied, though his voice lacked confidence. The rustling grew louder, circling them. The sound was subtle, like leaves brushing together, but it carried an unnatural rhythm. "Scan for life forms." Threll barked. Rin checked her device. "Nothing. There's nothing there." The rustling stopped. The silence was deafening. Then, out of nowhere, a scream pierced the air. The team turned just in time to see Varric being dragged into the shadows by an invisible force. His cries were cut off abruptly. "Varric!" Cran shouted, firing his plasma rifle into the darkness. The glowing bolts lit up the forest, but there was nothing to hit. "Fall back to the shuttle," Thrall commanded. The team moved quickly, their lights darting in every direction. The forest seemed alive now, the rustling sounds following them, surrounding them. "They're toying with us," Cran growled, his rifle at the ready. "They?" Jorah asked, her voice shaking. "Whatever's out there," Thrall said. "Stay together. Keep moving." The shuttle was in sight, its exterior lights a beacon of hope in the darkness. But the predators weren't going to let them escape so easily. As they neared the shuttle, Rin screamed. Something invisible slammed into her, throwing her to the ground. She struggled, clawing at the air, but there was nothing to grab. Her suit crumpled as though crushed by a massive force. "Help her!" Threll shouted, firing his weapon blindly. But it was too late. Rin's body went limp, and the invisible force disappeared, leaving no trace. Jorah began to panic, her breaths coming in gasps. "We can't fight what we can't see. Stay calm." Threll barked. "We're almost there." The remaining crew sprinted to the shuttle, but the predators were relentless. Cran stopped to cover their retreat, his plasma rifle blazing, but the creatures were too fast. He screamed as something slammed into him, dragging him into the darkness. Thrall and Jorah made it to the shuttle. The door slammed shut behind them, and the interior lights bathed them in a harsh, sterile glow. "Launch the ship," Thrall ordered. Jorah fumbled with the controls, her hands shaking. The shuttle's engines roared to life, lifting them off the ground. Through the window, Thrill saw the forest below. The predators were still invisible, but he could see the trees bending and shifting as they moved. They were watching, waiting. As the shuttle ascended, Threll's mind raced. What were these creatures? How had they evolved to be so perfectly hidden? And how could they be stopped? Back aboard the main vessel, Thrall recorded his report. Earth is no longer a viable research site. The stories are true. The silent hunters are real, and they are more dangerous than we imagine. Recommend immediate quarantine of the planet. No further missions. He ended the recording and leaned back, his hands trembling. The image of the forest, dark and alive with unseen predators, burned into his mind. As the ship left Earth's orbit, Thrall couldn't shake the feeling that they had been allowed to leave. The silent hunters had let them escape. But why? The alien exploration ship Vyrak hovered silently above Earth's surface, its sleek, metallic design blending seamlessly with the starry night sky. Inside the control room, Commander Osarian studied the barren planet below. Once home to billions of humans, Earth was now a desolate wasteland, its cities crumbling and overtaken by nature. The mystery of humanity's disappearance had drawn the attention of species across the galaxy. But rumors were dark whispers of an unseen nightmare that had wiped out an entire civilization. "We'll land near the last known human settlement," Zarian said, his tone firm. His crew of 5 nodded, their faces a mix of curiosity and apprehension. The shuttle descended to the surface, landing in the ruins of a once thriving metropolis. Skyscrapers stood like broken teeth, their windows shattered, their walls scarred. Vines crawled up the sides of buildings, and the wind carried a faint, eerie whistle through the streets. "Atmosphere is stable," said Kyle, the navigator, checking his instruments. "No signs of toxins or radiation." "Good," Zarian replied. "Let's move. Stick together and stay alert." The team stepped out onto the cracked pavement, their boots crunching on debris. The silence was unsettling. No birds, no insects, not even the rustle of small animals. Just the howling wind and their own footsteps. "This place feels dead," said Lyra, the biologist, her voice hushed. "It is dead," muttered Terran, the weapons specialist, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. Zarian raised a hand, signaling them to stop. "Enough talking. Scan the area for any traces of life." Lyra activated her scanner, the device emitting a faint hum as it searched for biological signatures. "Nothing so far," she reported, her brow furrowed. The team moved deeper into the city, their lights casting long shadows on the crumbling walls. Every step felt heavier, the air thick with an unexplainable tension. Then, a noise. A faint scraping sound. "Did anyone hear that?" Kyle asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zarian nodded, his eyes scanning the darkness. "Weapons ready. Stay sharp." The sound grew louder, circling them. It wasn't constant but came in bursts like something moving just out of sight. "There's nothing on the scanner," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "But I swear something's out there." The team formed a tight circle, their weapons aimed outward. The shadows seemed to shift and writhe, though it could have been a trick of the light. And then it happened. A blur of motion so fast it was almost invisible. One moment, Dren, the engineer, was standing at the edge of the group. The next, he was gone. No scream, no struggle. "Just gone. Dren," Lyra shouted, spinning around. "He was right here," Kel said, panic rising in his voice. Zarian clenched his jaw, his grip on his weapon tightening. "Stay together. Whatever took him is still here." The crew moved cautiously, their lights sweeping across the ruins. The tension was unbearable. Every sound, every shadow felt like a threat. Another noise, a low, guttural growl. This time, it was Lyra who screamed. Something unseen slammed into her, throwing her against a wall. She clawed at the air, her body writhing as if held by an invisible force. The others fired their weapons wildly, but the plasma bolts hit nothing. Lyra's screams ended abruptly as her lifeless body dropped to the ground. "What is this thing?" Terran yelled, his voice shaking. "It's not one thing," Zarian said, his mind racing. "It's many." Kale's scanner began to beep frantically. "I'm picking up movement everywhere. They're surrounding us." The crew broke into a sprint, desperation driving them forward. The city seemed to close in around them, the ruins twisting into a labyrinth of dead ends and narrow alleys. "They're hurting us," Kyle shouted. "Keep moving," Zarian barked. They reached an open square, its center dominated by a dried-up fountain. For a moment, the silence returned, but it was the kind of silence that screamed danger. Then, the predators revealed themselves not by sight, but by sound. Low, guttural growls filled the air, coming from all directions. The crew could feel them heavy, unseen presences, circling closer and closer. "What do we do?" Kyle asked, his voice breaking. "We fight," Terran said, raising his weapon. But the predators were faster. They struck with precision, taking Terran first. He fired wildly, but his screams were cut short as he was dragged into the shadows. Kale fell next, his scanner clattering to the ground as he was pulled into the darkness. Sarian was alone now. He stood in the center of the square, his weapon trembling in his hands. The growls grew louder, the air around him thick with the predator's presence. "This is Commander Asarion of the Virak," he said, activating his communicator. "Earth is hostile. Do not send anyone else." "The predator's here," he didn't finish. The last thing Zarian felt was a crushing force, as if the air itself had turned against him.